Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Iris Wagstaff. I'm a STEM program director at AAAS, and we are glad that you could join us today for the first in our HBCU Making and Innovation webinar series. We're really excited to have the speaker that we have today, but before we get started with the speaker, I'd like to share some information about AAAS and our inclusive innovation efforts. The American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS, is the oldest and largest general scientific organization in the world. We were founded in the 1800s and we have over 200,000 members worldwide. So most people know us from Science Magazine, but we actually have a family of science journals. So definitely make sure to check those out when you get a chance. So our mission is simple but huge, and it's to advance science, engineering, and innovation throughout the world for the benefit of all people. And we accomplish this mission through a variety of programs and initiatives. Some of the programs under our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department include the Emerging Researchers National Conference in STEM, better known as EARN, where we support undergraduate and graduate student STEM majors to come present their research. We have the Mason Awards for Women in Chemistry. We have the L'Oreal for Women in Science Fellowship. The Entry Point program, which supports students in STEM with disabilities, and also our Sea Change initiative, which supports institutional change at the faculty level. So one of the reasons that we really wanted to do this webinar is because of the recent events over the last few weeks. The social unrest, the protests, the highlighting of health and racial disparities, and in particular inequities in STEM education and the workforce. And we're really proud of our new CEO who has stepped up to address these issues via a number of statements that he's issued over the last few weeks. So one of those statements is on the recent shutdown STEM effort that we observed a few weeks ago, as well as Black Lives Matter. There's another statement on social unrest, racism, and inequality. So please make sure to check out those statements from our CEO when you get a chance. And finally, if you'd like to learn more information or get resources about AAAS, visit us at our website at AAAS.org. Next slide, please. So the HBCU Making and Innovation Initiative has been in place for the last 4 years. This work was initially proposed and started by Quincy Brown, who was a STEM program director at AAAS. And over the last 3 years, we've expanded and built on the initial focus of this work by building strategic partnerships and collaborations to sustain this project. The main goal of this initiative is to support HBCU students and faculty in making, innovation, entrepreneurship, and invention. And we do this via several mechanisms. One includes our Making and Innovation Showcase, where we support HBCU student teams to develop an innovation or prototype in response to the UN Sustainable Development Goals that include such things like hunger and poverty and renewable energy. We support these teams to come to Washington, D.C. They pitch their innovation for prizes. And also during the showcase, they engage in a number of sessions focused on topics like entrepreneurship, tech transfer, R&D commercialization, venture capital, as well as patents and trademarks. So also over the last 12 months, we've convened 2 innovation roadshows. One was held at North Carolina A&T State University, and the other was held at Clark Atlanta University Center. This project is supported by the National Science Foundation, particularly the HBCU University program. And we really like to acknowledge our NSF program officers, Claudia Rankins and Michelle Claville, for their support over the last few years. So finally, I'd like to acknowledge our project team. So in addition to myself, we have Neela White, who's a project director, and Tarek Clayton, who's a program associate. Next slide, please. So now I will hand it over to Neela White, who will introduce our speaker for today. We're so excited to have her, Deirdre Robertson, and I will hand it over to Neela.
Thanks so much, Iris, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neela White. I'm a project director at AAAS in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program, and I also manage the AAAS HBCU initiatives, such as the Making an Innovation Showcase and the Innovation Roadshows. It's my pleasure to introduce Deirdre Robertson. She is a chemist and a creative. She is co-founder of Motor City STEAM Foundation, an organization founded to ensure Black and minorities have access to adequate STEM technical learning and art education. She is a 2020 recipient of the General Motors Excellence in STEAM Award. She is also the founder of Melanin, a fashion brand that infuses science by using the chemical structure and pigments of melanin as the focal point in clothing and jewelry design. Melanin was created to celebrate and empower Black and brown people globally, challenge the status quo of beauty, and encourage all skin tones to be celebrated as beautiful. Combining science, self-love, and style, in the last year, the brand has received national recognition from Essence magazine. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Deirdre Robertson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deirdre Robertson, and today I will be presenting on the intersection of STEM and social entrepreneurship and what my journey looked like merging those two. Again, my name is Deirdre Robertson. I'm a chemist, I'm a creative, and I'm a Black woman. And it's important that I start there because each piece of that is a part of my identity and how I maneuver the world. The chemist side, professional, my creative, how I express myself, and being a Black woman is how I maneuver the world. And all those things are important into how I decided to live out my life. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, Southwest Detroit to be exact. I grew up in Southwest Detroit, which is one of the most diverse communities in the city of Detroit. So if you know anything about Detroit, Detroit has the largest percentage of African-American people in the country. I graduated from Cass Technical High School. I attended Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans, where I studied my BS, my Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry. And for my Master's of Science, I studied at the University of Detroit Mercy. So my work combines my STEM identity with chemistry and the rigorous academia from that part of my life. And it also does my creative side. So during my work, I'm always addressing the social justice issues through entrepreneurship. That is very important for my work and how these things actually came about. The social issues that I address through my entrepreneurial work is educational disparities, racism, and colorism. We all are familiar with racism, but a lot of times I find myself going more in depth about what exactly colorism is. Colorism, we must understand, is a byproduct of a racism. Colorism would not exist if racism did not exist. It is that whoever appears more adjacent to whiteness, that you're deemed more beautiful in spaces, that you're seen more intelligent, you're seen more likable. So these are the two main principles that I like to challenge and take on in my work through entrepreneurship. I think it's also important that we note that social entrepreneurship can be just as profitable and it's just as important work as just being a profitable business, right? The industries I take on is both education, technology, and fashion. We all know that fashion has a problem with racism and colorism, and we've seen it reveal itself over the last years. From Burberry deciding to put a noose on a hoodie to blackface from Gucci, like it's so many different things, and that's because we're not at the table in these spaces, right? And also with educational disparities. If we're not at the table, we can't address the issues that affect our communities. So this is why this is a focal point of the work that I do with both of my companies. So to go a little more in depth about Motor City STEAM Foundation. So this nonprofit was started in 2015 to provide STEAM education and programs for inner city youth in the city of Detroit. We wanted to increase the number of minority students pursuing these higher education degrees in the fields of science, math, engineering, technology, and even in arts, so that advanced degrees in STEM was no longer achievements, but they become the standard. But in order to continue to do the work with Motor City STEAM Foundation, we had to sustain ourselves. So in 2017, that gave birth to our ed technology company, the Lab Drawer. The Lab Drawer is a monthly subscription box that is delivered to the homes of middle school age students around the country. It collides STEM and the arts disciplines, creating engaging cross-functional learning experience for our students, and we use augmented reality as well. In 2018, when I was pitching in front of an audience at the Ford World headquarters, I decided to put the chemical structure of melanin on my shirt to make a point. After making that point, it resonated with so many people, and I knew I had something on my hands. That then gave birth to Melanin. It is a fashion brand that combines science, self-love, and style to celebrate and empower Black and brown people around the globe. Now, a lot of people hear the name Melanin, and they don't really understand what it means. So Melanin is actually not a made-up word. I didn't make it up. Eumelanin is the specific type of melanin responsible for the Black and brown color in skin and hair. And that's why I wanted to name my company Eumelanin. Our apparel uses melanated skin tones as the primary color palette, and our jewelry infuses the chemical structure of melanin in the designs of each piece. Eumelanin is designed to address issues of colorism by developing empowering fashion that redefines what it means to be beautiful in every shade. So today I wanted to give you my playbook. How did I get to where I am today? And different things that you can use from what I did to get here and how you can actually apply it to your own life. So there are 4 important pillars of the work that I do. First, be authentic. Everything is born out of authenticity. And I think when we can tap into that, that's when we begin to flourish. Do the work. Do the work. Do the work. I cannot stress that enough. It's about the different programs we do and the different things that we take on and how do we grow ourselves even outside of the classroom. But you can actually sit in the classroom all day if you don't execute. Again, what is the saying? Ideas are celebrated, execution is glorified. And then also keeping the stamina. So let's go into being authentic. How do you be authentic for yourself? How do you find out what speaks to your soul, your passions, your desires? Here are a couple of ideas on how to start that. First, let's think about our life experiences. Colorism and racism meant so much to me, as well as educational disparities because of where I grew up. I was born in Detroit, Michigan. I grew up in Southwest Detroit, and I've seen a lot of different disparities in the education system. So those are things that I wanted to take on in my career or in the future, as well as experiencing different things of being a Black girl, a dark-skinned Black woman, growing up in a time that people didn't celebrate having dark skin and having to learn to love myself. So these things spoke to me. I didn't know why at the time when these things were happening, and I didn't know how these dots would connect, but these things I have always been passionate about, and just having the belief that someday they'll come full circle, once you kind of continue to do the work. So you want to think about something you're passionate about, something that's deep in your heart, something that you could do for free, something that you can do if it doesn't work out, right? Something that you will always get up and want to keep doing. And also the impact. What impact do you want to have? What do you want your work to say to people? How do you want your work to speak to people? And a couple of things that are very important too. While merging your passions, your creativity, your community connections, your life experiences with your STEM identity, right? So what is your STEM identity? What are you interested in the field of STEM? Is it science, technology, engineering, math? Are you the mathematician, the person that everybody's going to with assistance on that calculus homework? Are you the programmer that can do some of the best design? Are you the engineer with advanced thinking and design thinking? Or are you the chemist that's always mixing up stuff, getting through the lab work, understanding the principles? Like, what is your STEM identity? But also, what are the problems in STEM that you see as well, right? So we have to be aware of that. I know when I started in the field of STEM, we noticed that it was not enough Black people in the field of STEM. STEM is actually growing to be one of the leading fields of jobs of the future. If we're not there to take on their jobs, our issues won't get addressed. If we're not there, if we don't have adequate STEM education, we can't take on those jobs. So that's kind of where my work was rooted in. And also, how did your work benefit others? What problems are you addressing that are just looking inward, but outward to the world? Problems that not just address your issues, but others around you are usually the problems that need to be solved. And how can you be a part of that? How can you be a part of the solution? Do the work. So developing expertise. Well, merging both STEM and social entrepreneurship is two arms to that, right? So what does our formal education looks like? It starts with a strong foundation in STEM, picking your area of study, taking additional classes. What is your major? Are you a chemistry major with a minor in biology? What's your concentration? What internships are you taking hold of? What different work experiences are you taking hold of as well? When I was in college, I knew I was interested in chemistry. I had an amazing chemistry teacher in high school, and I just grew upon that. So when I went to college, different work experiences that I took on were based in labs, running different reactions, just trying to actually learn and make sure I was as well-rounded as I could possibly be in the things that I was passionate about and interested in. Also coming from a background, I was a first-generation college student and also a first student going into the STEM, in the world of STEM. So I didn't have a lot of resources coming from home, but I really leaned into my community. Also, let's talk about informal education. So outside of the classroom, what things are you doing? What books are you reading? Especially if you're thinking about entrepreneurship. We're in a different age that you can learn a lot of things about entrepreneurship in many different topics, in books, in documentaries. So let's think about those things. How are we expanding ourselves through reading books and watching documentaries, signing up for different business programs and fellowships? An interesting story is that I am a STEM person. I've always been science and tech. When I started in Melanin, I had to learn marketing. I didn't think marketing was that important. And this month, as my company started to expand, and January alone this year, I read 5 books on marketing. You couldn't tell me that I didn't know marketing after that, right? How are we always growing ourselves by the things we read and the things we see and the programs we take? How do we go beyond just education in the formal sense to grow ourselves? In doing the work on building your strong STEM identity, right? So there's things that you get from being in the STEM field that translates to other sectors, and it translates very well. And it's from critical thinking. How do we analyze things? We're talking about evaluating conclusions. We learned that collaboration. Big problems in the world aren't solved by individuals. And how we communicate, and also just that strong research background that you pick up from having in STEM. Also innovation, right? STEM is very innovative, and that's something we can take and move forward with. That's why I really also am an advocate for making sure we merge the arts and creativity in STEM as well. So your expertise outside of your formal education, and I want to share this with you. So within the last year, as an entrepreneur, still working full-time, these are additional programs that I actually took and became a part of. So from business programs to actually refining your financials, to growing your company, to teaching you how to pitch, actually building out the tech side of my personality. I work with the University of Michigan Ross School of Business for a whole year to hone my marketing, and I had students work with me on marketing and actually grow out pretty much my marketing knowledge for my business. So when I read those 5 books, I actually reached out to the marketing teacher at the Ross School of Business and said, what books do you recommend that I read to actually have a better understanding of marketing for my company? I've took classes at College of Creative Studies, from photography to learn to look at my work in from a different perspective. I was part of Essence New Voices family, which actually they bring in Black entrepreneurial women, and they actually help them understand their business and grow them out, as well as help with them to get funding, help them with getting funding. I was also part of the Walker Legacy program, and also Tech Town Start Studio program that helped with the technology side of my company. So I'm just showing you all these things. Like, it's a constantly doing the work, just not formal education, but also outside of formal education, and allowing those worlds to collide. Execute. No matter how many programs you attend, don't matter how many things you sign up for, if you do not put your idea into motion, it does not matter. So we have to learn that we must execute. And in order to execute, there are sacrifices that come along with that. There are sacrifices in our personal time, in our money, and in our sleep. Do you believe in yourself enough? Are you willing to risk, your sleep, your time, and your money for the idea that you have? Are you passionate enough to move forward? Also, in order to execute, there's some things you have to sacrifice. What is your ideal path to success? Like, you cannot be tied to one path. At one point, I thought I was going to be a dentist. That's initially what I went to school for, right? Shadow at a dentist office and find out that wasn't for me, right? So don't be tied to one path, and know that your journey is completely unique. We have to be willing to sacrifice comparing our journeys to others' journeys. A lot of times that's what takes us out the game, right? I see so-and-so is here doing this, and I'm just doing this. Your journey is unique to you. You must learn the things that you need to learn in order to excel in your journey, in your life, and in your principles, and actually bringing your big idea to fruition. Stamina. So we all like to think that we have these big ideas, and guess what? Tomorrow we're going to go viral. Well, that's not true. You have to decide something you love so much so that you will keep going until your opportunity presents itself. All the things we talked about is how do you prepare yourself, right? But you prepare yourself because when opportunity meets your preparation, that you can actually grow exponentially, right? You can't really control when the opportunity comes. We like to think that we can, but some things are just out of our control. But you need to be prepared when these opportunities come to you. And I can give an example of this. I actually took a class called Retail Bootcamp here in Detroit. I had no intentions of opening up my own retail store. Less than a year later, after taking that class, I had won a contest to open up 1,000 square foot retail space for 4 months. And I won an award to help me build out the store. It was just me being prepared. Like, I didn't know this was something I wanted to do, but I took on the challenge of taking the class and learning the information. And when the opportunity presented itself, I was actually ready to move on it. And I understood what was needed and required of me from at least a better understanding than I would have, because it was actually one of the hardest things I've ever done, is opening a retail store. So to keep stamina, how do you keep going? It's deep focused. Like, again, continue to learn and grow and research your ideas and things that you believe in. It's self-care. How are we taking care of ourselves on the daily? It's going to require time, commitments, and some sleepless nights. But what are some things that you enjoy? A lot of time we like to think of self-care as going to the nail salon or doing these things to pamper ourselves. But what if self-care is just you sitting down and just having a day in? Like, what things speak out to you? Some things that I did for self-care was actually gardening. So this year, as my company began to grow, things got out of hand. I think we don't talk about this in entrepreneurial world, is when you actually start receiving abundance, that's something we have to learn to manage as well, right? So how do you manage this abundance of different things coming in when your calendar is full with meetings and you can't stay off the phone because you have a phone call, or this document is due, or we need this, or we need this photo? Like, how do you deal with that? Like, what are your self-care things? How is your mental health in check? Who are you talking to? Who are your mentors? Who is pouring into you, right? So make sure that you have that system in place as well, because it's going to be necessary. Also, allowing joy in your life. You have to have times that you just want to enjoy your life. Just do activities that are fun for you, right? So this is how you keep going. This is how you keep the stamina. This is how you're ready when preparation meets opportunity. So what happens when you follow the playbook? I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen for you, but I can tell you what happened for Melanin and Motor City Steam in the lab drawer. So Melanin, that was founded in 2018, Since it was started, I've raised over $50,000 in funding through pitch competitions and grants. UMelanin currently has self-funded itself in Bootstrap, and I have no loans in the debt of the company. I was asked to be a speaker at South by Southwest, and I was actually doing a talk based around how HBCUs are actually breeding grounds of innovation. And not only are they breeding grounds of innovation, they are because the students there are Black students. And when we think of new ideas, we're always inclusive of our communities. And because we're inclusive of who we are in our communities, we're inclusive of the rest of the world. And how how the HBCUs around are actually producing students in these STEM fields and these law fields that are actually developing companies that are changing the world. I was actually given the opportunity to do the pop-up retail store I just mentioned, but that was actually the first one. I was actually approached after the holiday to do a pop-up store right outside of downtown Detroit as well. So I actually had a retail store in my business from July 2019 all the way until January 2020. So one of the biggest things, and actually I'm just revealing this information, is now I have a partnership with Essence, and you will be able to purchase UMelanin apparel through their website as well. Now for Motor City STEAM in the Lab Drawer, we've raised over $100,000 in funding. And again, we have no loans in that business, no loans against that business. We are part of the My Brother's Keeper Foundation, and we received $50,000 to continue to do the work in Detroit, to continue to educate students in STEAM education. We received funding as well from the Ford Foundation. We actually do weekly Lab Drawer STEAM events that students can actually log on and learn. And me and my co-founders, we received the General Motors Excellence in STEAM Award in 2020. Cool part is we actually received it right alongside Lonnie Johnson, who actually was the inventor of the Super Soaker. And we thought that was pretty cool. So what does success look like when we're addressing pressing issues of today, right? So because UMelanin and because Motor City STEAM in the Lab Drawer, we're already centered on addressing these issues of disparities in education from Black and brown people, addressing these issues of Black people not being celebrated or being criminalized because of the color of their skin. When the world changed a couple of weeks ago, and even before that, a couple of months ago, we were in ideal position. So just to go into how UMelanin has been growing since everything happened. So the last couple of weeks, it has been a Black-led uprising around the country, right? And Black people want to support brands that aligns with their values, their beliefs, and ideas. To be positioned as a brand that didn't have to make a statement or address these issues because this is the work that I'm already rooted in says a lot about the company, right? What does the world look like when your company is so rooted in its principles and its understandings of what is going on in the world that you don't need to make a Black Lives Matter statement? Because of the work that you've been doing already lets people know that Black Lives Matter. Because of that work that we have already been doing for the last 2 years, UMelanin had the largest month of sales for e-commerce in June in the history of the company. We actually did not put out one ad over that time frame. I actually decided to pull back on ads because of what was happening in the moment. Now, Motor City in the Lab Drawer, as we address these disparities that's happening during COVID-19, as we just address these disparities in education, they've been heightened in COVID-19. So not do we only know that COVID-19 are affecting our communities, but they're affecting these Black and brown communities at increased rates than any other population in America. Another aspect of that we're not talking about is how bad it's affecting our communities, but it's also revealing some things in our community. In the city of Detroit, when they went to an online school platform, more than half of the students didn't even have access to internet or laptops, right? Not only that, some of their parents were still working on the front lines because they were service workers. And so parents weren't even equipped to actually teach their students, teach their children education, right? Now that they were being forced to. So that looks different in a suburban community than it looks like in our urban cores. So because of the work that we've already been doing around this, we were reached out to from parents and institutions and community organizations to see how they can partner with us to bring STEAM education into the home and to the doorsteps of their students all around the Metro Detroit area. Because we were centered in that work, we closed on the largest contract for our company from the third largest university in the state of Michigan, which is Wayne State University. And currently we are working this summer to provide over 2,000 lab drawer boxes, curriculum, and STEAM education, virtual STEAM curriculum to these students. And we were actually able to provide this curriculum. We were actually able to put these boxes together. So now the students are even able to engage with STEAM at home and then get on a video and talk with us and interact with us or their teachers or students. So that's the success that actually came from us already addressing pressing issues of today, right? So when the world went into an uprise and things were revealed, we were able to move and continue to benefit our communities. So these are some of the many achievements from me and my co-founders to Motor City STEAM. The top picture you're going to see is that's when we received our award in February 2020 from the General Motors African American Ancestry Network. So that's me in the brown dress, Deirdre Roberson. My co-founder in the middle is Shania Akune, and then Dr. Alicia Gabriel right there in the beautiful black dress. You also see the picture on the bottom is actually from the My Brother's Keeper Foundation contest, where we actually won $50,000 to continue to do our work in 2019. This is one of the articles that ran in the local paper after we won the 2017 award from the Michigan Women Forward and the Ford Foundation. And these are some of the highlights from our company, UMelanin. When I was tasked with building out a retail store, I decided to create an anchoring piece for my brand. And that piece is called the Melanin Wall. You are allowed to come in and celebrate being Black and brown however you want. And you get to come in front of the wall and just take pictures and celebrate yourself. It was designed as a staple in front of a staple as part of my business, because that's what I wanted people to understand, that you can come in here however you are, you can celebrate yourself, and this space is created for you. It's designed with you in mind, just as my brand is. You'll also see we powered an event over the holidays called the Melanin Music Wall Concert Series. And we had local artists around Detroit come in and perform on the wall. I'm actually standing on the bottom of the picture in my store, the retail store that was 1,000 square foot space. And then when I was actually a finalist for the Essence and New Voices Target Accelerators 100K pitch competition. I want to leave you with this. Iconic brands function like cultural activists, encouraging people to think differently about themselves. The most powerful iconic brands are prescient, addressing the leading edges of cultural change. These brands don't simply evoke benefits, personalities, or emotions. Rather, they're myths, prod people to reconsider accepted ideas about themselves. My name is Deirdre Roberson. I'm the founder of UMelanin, and thank you for having me.
So Deirdre, this is Neela. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I was definitely enlightened to learn about all the work that you're doing, not only in Detroit, but really national and globally, to address some of the issues that are faced to Black and brown people, specifically in the STEM field. So thank you so much. We'll now open this section to the Q&A. We'll have some moderated questions for Deirdre, but we will also open up the questions for the audience. So if you have a question, could you please use the question box, which is located on the right-hand side of the screen, to ask your question. So I'm going to start just with a couple of questions, Deirdre, and I want to address specifically, you talked about this early on in your presentation, but the role of the community in creating businesses and becoming an entrepreneur within your community. Our audience is primarily from the HBCU Making and Innovation Showcase, is along with the EARN students, but with the HBCU Making and Innovation Showcase, student teams are tasked with developing prototypes to solve one of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. These target issues such as poverty, clean water, clean energy. Many of the teams have addressed issues that are found within their communities. What do you feel are some of the leading problems within our communities that these student innovators could use their STEM, STEAM, or business backgrounds to offer solutions to?
So I'm going to answer that a couple different ways. So one, I think we are at a unique position in history, right? So there's actually, if you have a passion about something, if you know you're interested in one area, because of what's happening in the Black community across America, you can almost take up any problem and give, your assistance to. Whether we're talking about clean water in our communities, we all seen what happened with Flint. We all seen what's still going on with that Flint situation as far as water. Me being from Detroit, being very close to that situation, we've seen what happened. Right. Also, water equity. Right. Water shutoffs are happening in Detroit at ridiculous at a ridiculous value. Right. And we're dealing with global pandemic, and water was still being cut off. So I think clean water is definitely an important issue. We're seeing police brutality. We're seeing racism being pushed to the forefront of our television every time you turn it on, right? So how can you actually use your STEM work to actually address these issues? But you can be addressing how Black companies, Black businesses, Black communities are underfunded, that they've been here in these spaces, and then you have gentrification coming in, and they're actually receiving all the funding for new businesses, but ignoring the mom and pop shops because they can't scale, right? And they are part of our community. So I actually challenge you to find something that speaks to you and see how you can take action, because right now the door is wide open, right? So there is so much work to be done. You can pick what speaks to your soul, what speaks to your STEM background, and actually I implore you to move forward and go now, and don't look back, but actually use your skills and to see how you're going to make a change, because it is so many things that need to be addressed right now.
Thanks so much. And I want to just piggyback off of that question with a question from the audience. We had one person ask, how can companies leverage their STEM talent to help address issues in their community?
I think that's a great question. So how does company leverage their STEM talent, STEM employees, STEM talent? So number one is, who is in your C-suite, right? Who is in your e-board? Who is your executive board? How can you say you support diversity and inclusion and there's not one Black person on your board? Or who, and if the Black person is on the board, are they speaking up for the community? Are they bringing value? Are they making sure the work is actually being done? So that's how we take advantage of our STEM talent, is to make sure that we have Black people throughout these companies. So when we're in that room making decisions, our voices are being heard. When people are designing autonomous vehicles, we need to make sure that these vehicles can see Black bodies. When people are designing soap dispensers, we need to make sure these soap dispensers can detect Black hands, right? So you take advantage and you grow with your STEM talent by actually listening to your STEM talent, right? By actually listening to the people from these communities that are in these positions, and not just thinking that they're there just for diversity, right? That they have something to say, that they have feedback to give, they have experiences to share. So I think that's how a company capitalizes. And well, I don't even want to say capitalize, that's how a company utilizes their STEM talent, and actually, their Black STEM talent. So I think those are the things that we have to keep in mind as companies, as we're building small businesses, but also we have to challenge these corporate companies to do this, right? It's not just enough for us to sit back and say, hey, they don't care about this, or they don't care about Black people. We need to challenge them to make those adjustments to their C-suite and executive boards, so we can give our input and address the issues that plague our communities.
Thanks so much, Deirdre. I have another question from the audience. This one is personal about, you building and being an entrepreneur. The question is, building a fashion brand is hard work. So is starting a STEAM foundation. What are some of the challenges you face, not only in starting one startup, but two at the same time?
So I do want to make this clear. They weren't started at the same time. They start to take off at the same time, right? So one of the challenges, number one, is funding. UMelanin was self-funded, as well as the Motor City STEAM Foundation, is because we literally had no other choice, right? It wasn't ideal, but we were committed to the work. So that has been the number one challenge for both of the companies. Motor City STEAM Foundation was founded in 2015, right? So we're going on 5 years of doing the work in the community. And, a lot of the times our work was being recognized, and that's great. And so is the articles and the ads, but you need to be also able to live and make a living off the work that you're doing, right? So that's why we founded the lab drawer, and it was able to sustain us. And we've been growing that business out, and that was founded in 2017. So we've always been addressing these funding issues. I actually worked full time until COVID-19 hit, right? While I was building these companies. So I think funding was the biggest thing for both of the companies. Also, you know, being entrepreneurs of color, not being taken seriously, especially being a woman in STEM, right? You know, when we said we had this dope company about how we're going to teach kids through technology about STEM and the arts, you know, a lot of people just kind of look past us. So we continue to do the work. And now we just have to be at a moment that both the companies are growing. Melanin wasn't founded until 2018. I actually founded that after, again, pitching for one of my STEM companies. And the thing that made Melanin grow so fast and so quick was that the creativity behind it, right? I was sending a message out to the world in a way that it hadn't been done before. The fact that when I came up with the idea, now I even own the umelanin.com and .org. Like, in the fashion space, they're just not thinking about Black people, right? I was able to go in and take up these .coms and .orgs and have the only trademark right now in Melanin, right? So make sure you're thinking creatively and how you're going to innovate and change something. So we've seen brands address issues of different skin tones and products not being available, but when I introduced the word Melanin, nobody knew what it was, and people had thought I made up the word. So your creativity and your innovation, I think, helps with building something when you don't have all the funds there.
Thanks so much, Deirdre. Speaking of funding, knowing a little bit about your background, you spoke quite a bit about some of the successes that have been found through Melanin. But you've also shared that there were challenges with identifying funding sources to support your research and businesses. What recommendations do you have for students or for individuals who are interested in developing a startup but are searching for funding opportunities?
I would say you definitely want to keep researching, looking in your local community resources. I would start there, right? What does your local community offer? What programs can you get involved in? Because a lot of times the funding came on, I would join a program. At the end of this program, if I learned all these amazing things about growing my business, I was able to do a pitch competition, right? So how are you able to tie into some of these local programs, these local organizations with funding, right? Also, pitch competitions. You guys definitely need to be researching pitch competitions, because it allows you to see what other people are working on. It allows you to see people you are competing against and actually refine the work that you're doing, right? How you're delivering your presentation, what things you need to tweak. So I would say just going out there, researching your local community organizations and programs that they're housed from your local chambers of commerce, just starting there with those resources. And what happened for me is, I started with one program and it led me into the next program, and I heard about the next pitch competition, and I just got involved in the entrepreneurial ecosystem here. And that's what allowed me to start growing and hearing about more opportunities, more funding, pitch competitions and grants and different things like that. So I would implore you to start in that space and kind of grow from there.
Great, thanks for that advice. During your presentation, you talked about when you were focused on marketing, and in January, I believe, how you read 5 books specifically just on marketing. One of our audience members wanted to know, can you name the books that you read or some that you recommend for people looking to get involved in tech?
I don't know all of them, but it's important is that the last quote off my slide came from How to Build an Iconic Brand. That book stuck with me out of the 5 I read. I wish I had them in front of me, but hey, I'll make sure I give that information when the slide deck goes out, because I think that's very important. But that book was called How to Build an Iconic Brand. And when I read that quote in that book, it spoke with me on a whole nother level about what I was trying to do with my work. So that's one. Oh, The Originals. That is amazing. And it tells the story of Warby Parker and some of the other entrepreneurial brands and how they got their start. But I have a list curated, so I'll make sure I'll send that over to the team. And so hopefully they can get that out. But those books really changed the way I looked at marketing and how much of a connecting with people who believe what you believe and focusing on that and not what everyone else around them is saying. And it actually allowed me to build out my campaigns and my content around that. And when we think about marketing, sometimes we think about putting dollars behind it. And it opened up my mind to that marketing is about putting out good content, intentional content to reach your audience. And it's not actually about putting out dollars behind it. And if you put out good content, how that can actually turn into dollars for your company.
Thank you. I have one going more back into the STEM field, specifically in your STEM field of chemistry. And this question, the individual who asked this question wanted to know, they're curious what field of chemistry you pursued. Was it organic, analytical? And can you briefly describe the chemistry concepts that you use in development of your fashion products?
Awesome. So my interests have always been in organic chemistry. That's kind of the track that I was on. So when I went to school, that was actually one of my best classes, right? So the interesting thing about organic chemistry is, of course, that's when we learn the bases of ourselves, like carbons, the study of carbons and hydrogens and different things like that. So sometimes you don't learn enough about yourself in school, right? So when I learned about eumelanin and melanin, I wasn't even in academia, right? So it was me already having the background and understanding these chemistry principles. So when this idea came about, I was out of undergrad when this even, when I started researching that. So always being fascinated with organic chemistry and the principles built in. When I seen the chemical structure of melanin, it just spoke to me. It set with me. So, but the principles that I'm using for my STEM field is research, right? I wouldn't have been able to build this company. So many people had tried to come to me and explain to me that I don't know what eumelanin is, or this isn't, are you sure? But having that strong foundation of being able to do the research on what I'm saying, staying abreast on the new research that's always coming out about eumelanin as well, because that's something they're still researching, and they're finding out how it's found in other parts of our bodies and different things like that, right? So that research was heavy. My critical thinking skills that come from, STEM fields and chemistry, how to be innovative, how to problem solve. So I don't want to say that it's one thing or one principle, but it was a culmination of all those things that actually got me to where I am. So I feel like I couldn't found it eumelanin without having a background in chemistry or without having this creative background and being a Black woman, right? All these things were necessary to eumelanin to come to life today.
That's so great. We have quite a few questions, so I want to make sure I'm getting through all of them. This one is a comment and a question. This person thought it was a wonderful presentation, and he says, as the father of 3 young Black girls, how do I encourage them to be more entrepreneurial? And why should we consider HBCUs for their education?
Oh, that's a good one. So let me think about this. How to encourage you to be more entrepreneurial? The most important thing, so crazy thing is, I didn't know I was gonna be an entrepreneur. Like, this kind of just connecting the dots, right? So I think what's most important is that we encourage the youth to experience new things, to get an understanding of themselves. Don't be afraid to try new things, to make new friends, to be collaborative. And I think you'll start to see things birth there. And then that's when we start to hone in on those desires and on those, I want to do this, or on those passions, right? And then we start to cultivate that. I think, but it's important to allow them to start to develop into the things that they believe in and the things that they see in the world and the things that they want to take a part of, or like what drives their soul, what are they passionate about? And I think, as children, we start to reveal those things as well. Now, why should they go to a HBCU? I can talk about this one all day. So looking back on my experience, actually being a first gen college student, I had no clue what was in store for me. I heard so many different things about, hey, you need to see what the real world is like. You need to go into an HBCU, you're not getting the real world experience. I was able to learn and grow and understand myself, because 18 is not old enough. You don't know what you want to do in the world. You haven't really defined a lot of who you are, or necessarily know all the things that you like. But I was able to learn these things. I was able to grow in a space that poured into me, that cared about me, that I didn't have to think twice about, was this because I was Black? Was this because, I wore my hair a certain way? Was this like I was accepted fully? So I was able to focus on my studies. I was able to work on becoming a chemist. Me and all my friends, that's what, and also it says something to be able to compete against people that look just like you, right? To see this black mecca and all these shades and tones and hairstyles, and just so much diversity of black people. I went to school in New Orleans, so it blew my mind being a black girl from Detroit. So it grew me, it helped me understand of more of who I am, of the diversity of the people that I come from, of the depth of the people that I come from. And then I actually was given this opportunity to learn in that same environment, right? And looking back on it is now I understand, but when I was there, I don't even think I appreciated it as much, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I think that's what's important as we're growing as people and humans, and what we want and what we like and what our heart desires, that to be in that kind of environment that will allow us to flourish, right? So I think that's why it's important that we send our students to HBCUs, to give them that chance to flourish in their optimal environment.
That's wonderful, and I definitely appreciate that. Again, as we've mentioned, a lot of the audience and who we're targeting with the HBCU Making an Innovation Showcase are students from HBCUs. And many of the students we found in working with them would talk about how they don't have the same resources as some of the PWI institutions. And so we do have a question, staying along the HBCU front for a little bit, that HBCUs are underfunded. Lawsuits drag on for years. What do you suggest is done to help HBCUs get the funding their white sister institutions receive?
Ooh, I wish I had the answer to that one, because they are underfunded. And I think where it starts is us as HBCU alumni, making sure that we're giving back as much as we can, right? That we're pushing these things forward, that we're starting these funds. I think it starts there first, but then also making sure we go to these national funding programs through the government that, is taking HBCUs seriously, to actually, honestly, HBCUs need to be giving funds just because all of the what's happened to Black people here in America, right? So, and the reason that HBCUs were started in the first place is because we weren't allowed in their institutions. So I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that it starts with us. It starts with us giving back, and it starts with us from demanding people to see our institutions as equal, right? That's a lot of the issues too. We don't have that same glorification of HBCUs as we do of your Harvards and your Yales and your University of Michigans, right? So, we have a couple schools. We know that Xavier is *1 for doctors, producing African-American doctors. And we know that Morehouse produced some of the best Black male professionals in the country, as well as, Spelman. But that's all people here, right? We need to start putting on pedestals all the programming and all the things that are coming out of these HBCUs, because there's so much greatness coming out of it, and we're not giving the platform to show that. We see North Carolina A&T are producing engineers by the boatload, like no one can compete with that. But why doesn't it seem like the world knows that, right? So I think it's also like us giving back, but also making sure we're putting that information and that work out there to the rest of the world, so they know what we're doing. I'm building a case for HBCUs. By all means, we shouldn't have to do one, but I feel like if we're going to start somewhere, that's where it starts. I don't have the answer though, how we get more funding.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit specifically about the work that you do. We had a question from someone. I'm sorry, I just misplaced it. Well, this was a general question about your Motor Steam City Foundation. This person wanted to know, have you partnered with NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers, in any of your Motor City STEAM Foundation activities?
No, I think we haven't. I believe NSBE was actually in Detroit for their national convention. Was it a year ago? And we were going to do something with them, but time didn't allow. But we would love to do a partnership with NSBE. Like, that's high on our list. So if you have a connection with that, please send it our way. Yeah, so we haven't yet, but that is something we would love to do.
Great. And then a follow-up question, again, specific to your actual businesses. This person wanted to know, they're interested in learning more about the contents of the typical lab drawer boxes. which have been delivered to homes when schools are closed.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more about the contents of what
Yes.
are provided in the lab drawer boxes?
So the reason you don't see it on the website is because each month is kind of almost a surprise to the students. So we want them to actually get to learn all the different STEM concepts and STEM principles, right? While infusing the arts and engagement. So we don't usually reveal the contents of it, but let me give you an example of one of the boxes that we like to call the Picasso box, right? So in that Picasso box, there are samples of mica rock. They learn how to make pigments. They understand the science behind making pigments, where these pigments come from. And then they're given a canvas to actually create their own painting out of the paint that they just made, right? They're able to look at beautiful paintings from around the world and to learn all the history about painting and different forms of painting. And then again, they're allowed to produce their own canvas and become the artists as well. So that's the example of kind of what our boxes entail. And each month, so we're actually working on pushing out a crypto box. Like each month, it's a different STEM principle, whether we're talking about technology, whether we're talking about engineering, mathematics, or science. We want to make sure the students are getting a well-rounded education in these STEM principles in these STEM fields, and then that way they can actually make a better judgment on what they want to do with their lives as well, so they're just always focusing on one topic. So that's kind of what the lab drawer focuses on. So if there's any like STEM principle that you want your child to hone in on, trust me, they'll learn it over the course of 3 to 6 months as they're getting the box. And it kind of repeats the STEM principles, you know, as we do science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, it kind of continues to keep rotating.
Great, thank you. This person would like to know, how do you work and collaborate with other local organizations to increase your student reach?
That's an amazing question. So the reason we've been able to do that is 2 reasons, right? So Motor City STEAM Foundation is a nonprofit. We do that work based off the proceeds we're getting from the lab drawer or donations. So we're in the Ford Resource Engagement Center. We've worked with the Boys and Girls Club because we're bringing programming that they need and they're valuable, right? So they're reaching out to us, and that we're going in there and we're making sure we deliver the program, and they're letting us know their needs, and we're making sure we can deliver the program. We've even customized curriculum to actually meet the needs of their students. So when we're working with organizations, it looks a little different for the lab drawer than it would if you just went online and bought it, right? So for Boys and Girls Club, they're letting us know what type of principles and different things they want their students to focus on, and then we customize the curriculum. One of my co-founders, who has her PhD in organic chemistry, she is over our curriculum development. We make sure our curriculum is developed to meet the National Generation Science Standards. So they actually can fit in the classroom as well. So we're very conscious about the needs of what that program wants. So we're always developing those partnerships, and that's actually what's been amplifying our work. Is actually we're developing partnerships in these communities because that's what we said we wanted to do, and that's what we set out to do. And so that's actually how we've been growing our reach to students, especially Black students.
Thank you for sharing that. This person, and just a reminder to the audience, we have until 4:30 p.m. There have been quite a few questions, and I want to be sure to get through all of them and to give Deirdre the opportunity to answer them. So feel free, we have until 4:30. So if you have any questions, feel free to share them. This has been a really popular presentation, Deirdre. So we have a lot of interest in people who are looking to learn more and would like advice from you. So this question asks, if there is a complete white executive board, is there something that us as consumers can do to change that, to try at that company? Let me repeat it. If there is a complete white executive board, is there something that us as consumers can do to try to change that?
I say as a consumer, you have a right to request to, number one, meet with them, right? Meet with that organization, because I'm almost pretty sure that if the board is completely white, they don't really understand what the consumer that is Black or brown needs, and they're not understanding our needs. So I would start there, right? Meeting with them, trying to address the needs of the community and making sure that they understand what the community needs. Personally, I think it's hard for people to make anything for us without us, right? So I don't believe that that's an effective way to make products, make programming, or do anything for Black and brown people if Black and brown people aren't in your executive board. So that would be my answer for that. But it starts the conversation.
Great. Thank you. Here's another question. Do you have any advice or insights on how to work together with stakeholders to create an an inclusive innovation community of practice?
Yes, I think how you work together with stakeholders, it's by requesting meetings in the community. So as a consumer, as a person in the community, as a person coming to their programs, you ask for the community to come into your space. You ask the community what they need. You ask the community, how can we assist you, right? That's how you work with the stakeholders, and the stakeholders have to be involved, because change doesn't happen from the bottom up. It only happens from the top down, right? So if the stakeholders aren't committed, they don't know who the community is, if they don't know who their consumers are, if Black and brown people aren't at the table, then they're not going to address our issues. So the only way to get, the stakeholders involved is by actually having the stakeholders meet with the people putting the boots on the ground, meeting with the people needing these things in these communities, and understanding their needs, and actually hearing their needs, and actually implementing their needs, right? And throughout their business or throughout their product. And I think that's the only way we can actually fully address these issues. And honestly, if a stakeholder is there, the stakeholder, y'all need to put Black and brown people on y'all executive board and y'all C-suite, period.
Great advice, great advice. Here we have one who is an alumnus or soon to be alumnus of Xavier University of Louisiana, Tiffany Phillips. She loved the presentation and would like to know what you know now about chemistry, and with knowing what you know now about chemistry and entrepreneurship, what advice would you give to first generation graduating seniors who have a solid background in research, both in academia and in industry?
Ooh. So what advice would I give? So one of the things is, when I was in your position and I was graduating, I thought I knew a lot, and I slowly realized that I knew not as much. I don't want to say nothing, but you definitely learned some things in your STEM career, or going to school. And it's so funny that we call it STEM right now, because when I was in undergrad, it wasn't called STEM. But it's so much that you learn being at that university doing the research, but also you are giving the building blocks and the foundation of what you need to grow. I would say to you, with all the heavy background in research, how do you take that and apply that in new innovative ways and things that you are passionate about? I didn't learn what melanin was until after I got out of undergrad, right? It didn't have to turn into a fashion brand. It could have turned into many different things, right? But the fashion aspect of it and the style is what spoke to me, right? But I wanted to be something more than just fashion. Like, how do I uplift people through this brand? How do I change the way they look at people like me, right? So I would say, like, take that STEM foundation and then think about how you can innovate and change and meet a need, right? And the research is just so important. Like, when I tell you the research that we get out of having STEM backgrounds, going to school for STEM majors is ridiculous. Just definitely capitalize on that. Like, your attention to detail, the experience that we get out of labs, like, it really will serve you. It really will serve you. And I can't exactly tell it how it will serve you specifically, but I'm letting you know the dots will connect for you. And I would just say, stay true to that, stay true to your work, stay true to who you are, and allow that to guide you. But that's the best advice I can give, again, because all our journeys are different.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great advice for Tiffany and for any, I think, graduating seniors. This is a great question. We talked definitely about resources and having them and not having them. This question comes from someone who lives in a rural area. And they say, as someone who's been doing community-based STEM activities for free, what recommendations do you have for school system partnerships in virtual environments?
Well, one thing, the school systems usually do have funding, right? They have funding, it's a small amount of funding, it's allocated funding. I would say your recommendation to schools is that you have to do a couple of things, right? And this is what we found out working with the lab door. You have to make sure what you're doing is meeting the school's needs as well. So that's when you find that synergy there, right? So whatever program that you can do, and you can actually start to monetize that by offering it and making sure it's meeting actually the school standards. Unless that's something you want to do for free and it's more of something you're thinking like an after school program, and you could just work with their youth, because there's always students, especially in rural areas as well as in the city areas, that need access to adequate STEM education. But I would try to find that synergy between you and the school systems, and what STEM principles or STEM ideas or STEM concepts that they need assistance with, and what STEM ideas and principles do you have an expertise in, right? And kind of use that to how you partnership with schools.
Thank you for that advice as well. Here's another question that we have, a really good question, one that I know that many of us as professionals can speak to. But what role do mentors play in your success? What advice would you give for those looking for mentoring? How do you engage in asking someone to serve as a mentor? What if you don't know them?
Oh, that's a great. So first I want to start off by saying, like, I would not be where I am today if I didn't have amazing mentors. It didn't start off that way. It started off with me doing the work. It started off with people seeing me doing the work, and then it started, people wanted to give me advice and make sure I got to where I needed, right? So I think it always starts off with the work. And then in those spaces, you begin to meet people and you begin to connect with people, and it kind of happens authentically, right? I also feel like you need many mentors, right? So I have mentors that guide me in the STEM space, which are amazing. And actually, one of my STEM mentors is the reason why we actually got the contract with Wayne State University, right? I have mentors that guide me in the spiritual space, in the mental health space, and also just mentors in the business and entrepreneurial space, right? I think those are very important to have. I think without those mentors, I wouldn't be in the position that I am today. I think you build authentic, genuine relationships through doing the work. And you will actually see people want to help you along the way. If you don't know them, it doesn't hurt to reach out to someone, right? To send an email to let them know, hey, I've been admiring your work. Maybe I can take you out for coffee, right? Maybe, you could let me shadow you, just reaching out to your mentors in that way, or your ideal mentors in that way, and just seeing how you can start to build some kind of relationship. Because it's hard to mentor someone or have someone mentor you that you don't have a relationship with. Even now, I'm actually a mentor to many young girls, right? So I just think, just building that authentic relationship and like giving yourself time, right? It was at one point where I was just like, I need a mentor. I'm so lost. I'm this, I'm that, but I continued to do the work and they started to reveal themselves, right? Because you want the right mentor for you as well.
Thank you for sharing that info on mentoring. We have a question from a student at North Carolina A&T University. They thought that it was an amazing presentation, so let's share that. But they also wanted to know if there are any tips or recommendations you have for starting an inclusive organization between all STEM majors, between multiple HBCUs. This person is speaking specifically for the multiple HBCUs in North Carolina.
My thing would be, number one, that sounds like an amazing idea. Number two, you pull a group of people together and you start it, right? We have to do away with the idea that we're going to have all the ducks in a row. A lot of the things about my company, we work the kinks out as they came, right? So starting like, what do you need to do to start an on-campus, group, society, organization, like, right? Researching those principles and then growing, like, who's all else interested in? Like, okay, now how do we connect with students at other schools, right? So I think actually just starting where you are and actually letting that lead the way, and then reaching out for people with resources, because each way along, each roadblock, each obstacle, you'll hit, and you'll be able to pull that from somebody else, like, hey, this happened, who do I need to talk to? So just actually getting started and actually working out the kinks that you go. Of course, start with a plan, but be willing to throw that plan out the window, right? Because it never sticks to the plan. It always, it's always bumps. It's always obstacles, but definitely start where you are. You're passionate about it, so you should start it.
Thank you. Here's another question with HBCUs. Do you have any advice on working with HBCUs to support innovators of color?
I think as HBCUs, we need to be more intentional about creating programs that actually says that, like, right, this program is designed to create innovators of color. This program is designed to create more entrepreneurs, right? So I think, each HBCU kind of has its focus, but I think we need to put that into the thread of HBCUs, right? Like how if North Carolina A&T is producing all these Black engineers, what does the HBCU innovation hub of engineers look like versus the one that's based on innovation in medicine, right? And entrepreneurial in medicine and different things like that. I think we need to start making that one of our pillars at HBCUs to actually get that into the fabric of who we are as well. And I think that's where it starts there with programming and actually building that into knowing like all these things, you can do this and you can be an entrepreneur and an innovator on top of that, right? That is not one or the other. It can be both and you still need this base, you still need this foundation of STEM principles, STEM education, or business principles, business education, whatever that HBCU specializes in, but also making sure that everybody is aware that they have a focus on innovation and entrepreneurial endeavors.
Great. So North Carolina is definitely in the house today. We have a lot of of our audience members from North Carolina. And this question comes from someone who's located in Eastern North Carolina, Bertie County. They would like to know if UMelanin would have an interest in having a presence in Bertie County, but specifically they just wanted to share a little bit about this. Bertie is a rural, predominantly Black county that has challenges like much of rural America. As an HBCU grad from Morehouse, his calling is serving our people across the globe. Bertie is an invisible county. So I think in general, if people wanted to work with you, you could please share some information of how they can get in contact with you. But how do you plan to kind of disseminate the work that you're doing across many counties and many areas of the country?
Yeah, so the way I'm trying to get the work that I'm doing across many counties and countries is through viral campaigns, is through online presence, is through having resources that people can connect through no matter what part of the country that they're in. Specifically, for Motor City STEAM and the Lab Drawer, we're shipping out those resources around the country. We're allowing people to come into our space when we do these virtual STEM events. And some of the same things are actually going to be rolling out soon with UMelanin and different things and different talks about different concepts about in racism and colorism and making sure, not only as a community that we are understanding, what racism and colorism is, but also that we're calling them the right things and we're understanding the systemic structures that allow these things to continuously persist, right? So still in some of the developing of what that looks like and how we're going to roll that out. But if you're interested in working with UMelanin, definitely you can reach me at hello@umelanin.com. That is the best way. Shoot us an email. If you go to the website, you can actually subscribe to stay linked, on all the different things we're doing right now, especially how we're actually using our brand to support the community through a local church here and a local organization that actually stands within the Black community and has been providing a lot of resources during COVID-19 and during the uprising that's been happening around the country.
Great. And I'm sure a lot of people will be reaching out to you following this presentation. I have a question that we kind of just want to know a little bit more about your creative side. And so I always, when I interview folks or when I'm talking to them, I'd like to know about what their moonshot invention, innovation, or business would be. So if time and money were no barrier, what would be your moonshot company or invention or innovation? And what would you recommend for students who have these sort of moonshot ideas, these ideas, that are large in scale? How would you recommend to students to move closer to a goal for one of these moonshot ideas?
So I'll start with the latter. One of the things is about, if our students, I want to say this, you may think you're dreaming big, but I can attest to you're probably not dreaming big enough, right? So I want to say, like, don't ever think that something is out of your reach or out of your grasp, and continue to just start the worst part that can happen is that if you think you're dreaming too big, that you don't start, right? I would say just start on how you walk out that idea, how you walk out that work, or just start with the foundation and the principles. But my moonshot idea, and this is why I say dream big, right? Because I'm seeing things happening in real time right now. And I was like, oh, I didn't even dream big enough for this. So would be, and it has something to do with my brand new melanin right now. The other day, I found myself looking at world headquarters of some of the largest fashion brands around the world. But what does a fashion brand looks like for me in the years? How do I even incorporate smart fabrics and the science and the technology of fabrics? If money was no limitation, I'll be in the lab right now engineering new fabrics and new design, right? How do I manipulate to like match skin tones perfectly? It's so much technology and science that I'm looking to incorporate in my brand in the next 5 to 10 years that I'm probably giving y'all some of my secrets. But dream as big as you think and just know that that is not even where it ends. So I just want to say, like, make sure you just open it up and like try things. But just don't ever feel like you're limited, because what I've been learning is like, oh, I didn't dream big enough. Like once you hit a goal, and it's going to be a point in time when you hit this goal, it's going to be a point in time things start improving for whether it's your business, your company, your career field, your professional life. So just be open to that. And just be open to one day that moonshot that you have, that big idea, you may actually be able to do it. It may not happen tomorrow, but what does that look like in 5, 10, or 20 years? Like I have a plan for you, Melanin, for the next 30 years, right? And it's so funny when people see the company and I'm just thinking to myself, like, you don't even know the half, right? So I just encourage you to keep dreaming big, right? Keep thinking of ways of how you're gonna make that idea come to life. Because that's what I'm doing every day with my brand, and each day things are changing and they're changing fast now. So just keep those eyes wide open and just keep pushing forward.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So we're wrapping up with the questions. Do you have any last sort of words of advice or anything that you'd like to share with this audience before we conclude the presentation today?
I would say just be authentic and start where you are, right? Let that guide you, using your passions. Let those things guide you, knowing that you feel that way for a reason, right? Listen to that and keep that in mind as you go on this journey in life, as you go on this journey in STEM, and if you're deciding to go on this journey in entrepreneurship. Be willing to commit yourself to something that you can do every day. And don't listen to people that say it shouldn't feel like work. It's going to feel like work, but do you want to get up every day and do the work? How do you feel about it?
Thank you.
That's what I'll leave people with.
That's wonderful. Deirdre, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. And we're going to turn it over to Iris so that she can close out our presentation. But thank you so much for that engaging presentation and Q&A session. We really had a lot of questions, and I appreciate all of the audience members for chiming in and for sharing your questions.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. This was an awesome presentation. People are contacting me as we speak, so I definitely want to thank you for a great presentation. I was an organic and analytical chemist in my first career, so I always love highlighting my fellow chemists who are doing great and innovative work. So thank you for all that you do. I'm also from North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, Goldsboro to be exact, and I'm an Aggie alum. So I really love that we have so many of my North Carolina folks who are joining us. I work with middle school teachers in Bertie County, so great. Thank you so much for your support. And I just wanted to share again, the reason why we did this webinar is we really wanted to show how you can leverage your STEM expertise and your STEM background to address social justice issues, particularly within the context of innovation and entrepreneurship. And I think Deirdre did an awesome job of sharing how she's leveraged her chemistry background. So if we hope there are potential sponsors and partners and collaborators that's watching, and as Deirdre mentioned, you can reach out to her If you want to discuss partnerships or collaborations, reach out to her at hello@umelanin.com. Definitely check that website out. I have purchased a lot of merchandise to support this awesome company. So please do the same. I did want to answer one question came up about how can HBCUs get support and resources and funding. So if you missed the beginning, I did share that this webinar series, this project, this grant is funded and supported by the National Science Foundation HBCU Up program. So if you are a faculty person or program director or with a professional society, check out the link. So I did include the link to the NSF HBCU Up program site. So definitely go check out that site. They have amazing resources and support to support efforts like this, these inclusive innovation efforts. So definitely check out the NSF HBCU Up website. And then another question came up about how can students like from North Carolina HBCUs work together across schools. One of the ways is find out if your school has maker spaces or offices of innovation or offices of entrepreneurship. You can start making an innovation club and invite speakers like Deirdre to speak, like start a speakers bureau. So exactly like she said, there are a number of ways that you can engage in these efforts. So I just want to share some closing information for you. The slides and the recording of the webinar will be posted on our EARN conference site and our HBCU Making It Innovation site probably by the end of the day Thursday, so check back. The second thing is we definitely would like for you to complete the survey about this webinar and share your thoughts about this webinar. You will receive the survey via email as soon as this webinar concludes. And then finally, if you enjoyed this webinar, we need to hear from you. Please post on social media. We have our Twitter handle is @AAASmaker. So tag us on Twitter. Share with us how much you enjoyed this webinar. We also have 2 LinkedIn pages. One is our HBCU Making Innovation LinkedIn page. We also have our EARN Emerging Researchers National Conference in STEM LinkedIn page. So tag us on social media. You can reach out to myself on LinkedIn as well as Neela. And then you can visit our program website at the link below. But we definitely want to hear from you, especially if you enjoyed this webinar. So thank you again and have a great rest of the day.
Okay.